1.
Okay, call the meeting to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty, and justice for all.
Okay, roll call, please.
Mrs. Spiritu? Here. Mr. Gorbett?
Here.
Mrs. Laird? Here. Mr. Price?
Here.
Ms. Ray? Here.
Approve or amend and sign the minutes of the regular meeting held May 10th, 2021. We have a motion to approve the minutes, moved by Mrs. Ray.
Second.
Second by Mr. Price. Any questions or concerns regarding the minutes? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Ray? Yes. Mr. Price?
Yes.
Mrs. Spiritu?
Yes.
Mrs. Laird?
Yes.
Mr. Gorbett?
Yes. Motion carried. Walk-on items,
I have none, sir.
superintendent's report.
Okay. Thanks, everyone. Welcome. Just a couple of things by way of announcements, then a couple of things that I'd like to sort of get your guidance on as we move into the future here. First of all, tonight on our agenda, there's a item for computers. A lot of them, like 1,000 of them. It's item 4. And we talked about this a couple weeks ago. If you remember, this is our step into one-to-one at Ross High School using our ESSER funds. Very excited. It's a little earlier than we even thought. We got a good deal on price and delivery date and all of that. I'll have more about all of those later, but with your permission tonight, we'll get the PO going and get those devices coming. We actually, with our policy group, the computer group looked at all the impact on policy. There's actually 7 different policies that will be impacted by a one-to-one rollout. Everything from acceptable computer use to property to fees to, so it's going to be a large conversation. So it's coming, but we're not quite ready for all of that part of it yet. So a little bit of cart before the horse, but if we can get these devices coming, we can then continue on with your blessing. So I just want to get that out front. That's very exciting for tonight. Also, you feel it's a little warm in here. We have 2 air conditioning units here at the middle school, one that does the 1st and 2nd floor in this area, and one that does the 3rd floor. One on the 3rd floor, we've had a circuit board go out, and I don't know much about it all, but it's toast, and it's been that way all spring. Unfortunately, now it's getting really hot, we're feeling it. So we've had a very warm 3rd floor. As you go out tonight, if you can listen, you'll hear a couple really big fans. Overnight, we're circulating the cold air from the 1st and 2nd floor up to the 3rd floor. Also, some of the classes from the 3rd floor, finding some other places to meet during the day. It's pretty warm up there. I know it's not comfortable, but I also know that even these students were on the 3rd floor of STOM last year without air conditioning, so they certainly remember what it's like, but it's something we're on. If you hear something about that, please explain. It's not that we don't have the money or the drive to fix this. We can't get parts, which I think is probably a situation all over the country. We're hoping that part comes in this week. They're actually flying a technician in from Texas then to do the work to get that thing back up and running. So that's the real quick scoop on air conditioning at the middle school. Another thing that we're working on, actually even more today, was the condition of the site of the Hayes property and the Stom property and the Washington property. We left really in the fall, if you remember, those all came down pretty quickly and pretty smoothly. We didn't get back to finishing. And I mean, with the topsoil, grass seed, straw, we didn't get to that. So those sites are still under the control of our demolition companies. We kind of have to get on them a little bit because we're not thrilled with the turnaround. So there's a lot of grass growing high, weeds, construction fences, the little foam barrier piece that goes around the whole thing is still all in place. So hopefully that will be happening very soon. So we're starting to hear from neighbors, understandably so. It's not acceptable and we're on that. So if you hear something, that's the scoop there. Okay, one item for tonight is kind of the board's direction on the in-person meetings. The law that allows us to have virtual meetings runs out the end of June. Now, I did hear this week that there's legislation proposed, and maybe Chantel may have heard this too, but there's some legislation proposed to extend that through the end of the calendar year. Now, whether that or not that will pass, I don't know. But I think it's pretty clear we could, and I think Mr. Price brought this up last month, we could go back to in-person meetings. So I didn't know, that's really my recommendation. I think we could move back out in, or if you'd like, maybe back into the cafeteria, the middle school cafeteria. We stay in here and set back up the way we used to with chairs. But as of June 2nd, there's no health orders. So that's kind of a conversation I thought we could have tonight as we move forward. So right now this is the last one in June. We have 2 more meetings then in May, 2 more meetings in June that we could still hold virtually according to the current law, but that law does run out in our next 2 meetings. So maybe a plan. So I don't know if anybody had any strong thoughts, or we could kick that around.
I would be in favor of going back to in-person meetings, and I wondered, might it be beneficial to still offer the virtual? And what I do like about that is if there are people for various reasons who can't attend in person, they can be informed of what's going on in the school. And I like that it's recorded. And Meg and I got to believe that's got to be a lifesaver because we get very conversational. So
She's a
minutes
fan.
have got to be nuts. So I'd be in favor of both.
I feel the same way. I'd rather just go back to the way we were in here. There's no health mandates in place by the time we have our next board meeting. To me, there's no reason to keep doing this, but I agree with Chantel. I think the online platform is great because there are a lot of people that are watching that. And if they still don't feel comfortable coming in, or they can't make it for whatever reason, they can see that, but it's also recorded. So there's all that. So yeah, I agree. That's my thoughts.
I would agree.
All right. I don't know if we would need a motion or we could just kind of go back. I don't know if we moved to do this. I think we followed the law. I can't recall.
I don't think we took
any
action on it other than this is what the mandate was.
But
that's what we did.
With your permission, then we'll just kind of get this back set up next time and have.
I don't know how the setup would be, but I don't know about the distance, but I like how we're.
Yeah, we would just tighten this up a little bit.
Yeah, because it's easier for conversation than how we were before. It's like
I would think with this, we still have some room out there given the number of people that typically came.
Yep, and we can go back a little bit too to give ourselves some room. Yeah, I agree.
So beginning with June 14th.
June 14th, we will be in person.
We'll have open meetings again here.
Yes, sir.
Will there be a public announcement to that?
Yeah, actually, Linda was on me today. Don't you forget to ask them about those open meetings so she can get that out. So
sounds good.
Yep, we'll make it happen. Thank you very much. That relieves my next question, and I'm picking up on a theme here, but the governor's latest thing was schools now have the choices after June 2nd to continue mask wearing. I've been talking to a lot of my colleagues about this, and everyone's pretty much on the same page that if there aren't state mandates for masking, then we shouldn't be mandating anything. So I'm going to recommend, I would like a motion on this because we moved to do this in the past, but is to, and I've clarified that it's midnight June 1st actually is when that runs out. So that would give us 2 days in school with kids, June 2nd and June 3rd, and then a couple of days obviously with staff. But I would recommend, with the board's approval, to kind of follow that pattern around the state, looks like, is anybody after. I think the intent was obviously to get through school, but I think Mr. Price duly noted that without any health mandates at the state level, it seems hard to propose those for our students. So that's the other one I would make a little conversation. If we want to do a motion and converse, maybe to follow Robert's rules, that might be more appropriate, I suppose.
Could we have a motion to approve the?
Well, we probably should. Yeah. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
To approve the idea that we're not going to be mandating masks as of June 2nd.
Is it masks alone, or because I think the governor's directive is they're all gone?
Good question. Distancing, masks,
anything.
We're back, and right now, we're handling prom and graduation. It's as if there are no restrictions. That's right. Thank you for that clarification.
Okay, could we have a motion to approve no restrictions at school-related activities beginning June 2nd.
I move to approve.
Second.
Moved by Ms. Laird, second by Mr. Price. Any discussion?
I think it's a good thing. We just had a birthday party for my father-in-law. My sister-in-law, Tanya, who teaches here, she's like, Tom, I want to actually see my kids' face. So I've been teaching them all year and they've had masks on. I want to see them and actually interact. She said, if I can get 2 days with them and finish out the year that way, great. So.
Okay, roll call, please.
Mrs. Laird,
Yes.
Mr. Price,
Yes.
Mrs. Spiritu,
Yes.
Mr. Ray,
Yes.
Mr. Gorbetz.
Yes, motion carries.
Thank you very much, Board. And my last item before we get into our presentation is kind of the next work session. I've got a thought, and actually I've been working with Mrs. Hurd on this, actually my entire staff of directors, is maybe we would put a, almost by department, almost a mini theme for each month. So maybe it's fine arts one month, then maybe science, then maybe math. And let's just kind of go through our content areas. And they wouldn't have to be a long, giant thing, but just to kind of, here's what we're doing. And here's some kid work. Here's some, some stuff, some ideas, where we're headed, all of that. So now it wouldn't have to, and I want to guard the board's time, but I thought it might be a nice, at least skeleton to hang on some other activities as we go forward. So that's just, I'm throwing that out maybe for some future ideas. And I know that we have got an idea for tonight, but I think after that, there really wasn't much else on the schedule coming up. So I'm putting out maybe as an idea, but open to some others if you have some.
I think it sounds great.
Okay. All right. All righty.
Sounds
I like
good.
the idea. I'm sorry, Mr.
Go ahead.
Gorbetz. I'm sorry. I like the idea, but I feel that we should showcase our kids more.
Yeah.
It's nice to see what you're doing, but have some of the students be involved with that, because that's what a lot of other districts are doing to, it kind of encourages the kids and builds them up if they're doing something special.
Absolutely. That would certainly be the intent.
Plus, it's been a while since
We've seen a kid.
Yeah.
Trust me, I understand. It's been a long time since we've seen
It'd be
kids.
nice to see some some stuff that they've done, or see the
Yeah.
kids' faces.
Oh,
And
Mr. Price, there you go, caring about kids again.
Yeah. Yeah.
Might be a little hard to get them in for the summer, but maybe even some that are going to our summer school
Yeah.
to talk about what their experience is, since that's going to be very different, especially for the families listening from home, to hear from the kids'
Sure.
perspective.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Sounds
I think there's going to be some cool things happening in that summer program. That'd be easy to do.
awesome.
Okay. I wouldn't think I need a motion on that. We'll just make that kind of going forward. So, okay. I think that's all I had on some other items. So if with your permission, Mr. Gorbetz, I'll continue on. Folks, in the hot yellow folder right there is, there are three items. You pull out the first one. It says Fremont City Schools Board of Education. It's sort of, you remember last month, Vi brought up some things that she'd been going to, a lot of work sessions and PowerPoints about what's happening around the state, a lot of clarifications on finances and summer school and all those things. So what we've done is sort of kind of put together in one packet, sort of a summary of a lot of those things, so you can have some information, so we know what's going on. On that first page is really just an ESSER. So if you give me a few minutes, I'd like to review kind of what we've done and where we are, and then the supporting documents behind that would be all the kind of the details. But for ESSER, I should have remembered what that stands for. I don't remember. I'm sorry. It's ESSER. It's ESSER. Those things take on a life of their own. So it's ESSER. There's been now ESSER 1, 2, and 3, and also a CARES Act. And we're just now getting ESSER ARP, which is actually in our language ESSER 3. We're just now getting the window open for that. As a matter of fact, we look on our federal website on the screen, and they put $1 into our ESSER ARP account just to get it opened up. And I'm trying to talk Megan into spending that on something. I don't know. We're going to find something. But right now, there's $1 million, but there will be almost $7 million in there before it's all said and done. So a lot coming still, but my goal tonight is to kind of explain how that all works. So anyway, the ESSER thing has been ESSER 1, 2, and 3. If you remember, the first round came way back in probably April. I don't know if that sounds accurate or not, but it was early. And that was some of that initial things for masks and barriers and cleaning equipment and spray. And, even still today, our bus drivers, after every trip, miss down the whole bus with this backpack thing, And Mr. Beatty, our head custodian here in elementary, they call him, who's the, he's got a backpack and a sprayer. He's a Walt Disney character. I'll get it in a minute. But he's out there spraying between every lunchtime, so we really are doing it. And all that stuff obviously took a lot of money to do. So that was that first round. So in the safety, we have masks, dividers, equipment, sanitizers. And then in the area of technology, obviously we sent devices home. If you remember, we had hot spots that we had in buses around town. We also had 3 or 4 community businesses that helped us with those hot spots as well. But the equipment and the hardware was all paid for through those ESSER funds. We paid for all that PLP, all that software that we used to teach kids all year long was ESSER money. That's something we wouldn't have had to spend before. So all that was done, and that was obviously very expensive. Thermostats in the building to take temperatures, more thermostats for the nurses to use, cleaning equipment for the buildings, all that stuff came out of that monies. And then in the personnel section, obviously we were able to keep a nurse in each building, which is something we hadn't had before, which I think the timing on that was absolutely perfect. I don't think it's something we probably would have prioritized budget-wise had we not been in the situation we were in with COVID. Obviously, not a good time to cut nursing staff. So that was a huge thing. Some mental health support and counseling support was also a part of that. Tutors, and then also the expense of, if you remember, a lot of lunches were served out through car windows. Thousands and thousands and thousands of lunches served through car windows. And that all takes personnel to do and time to do and all that. So really, that's a large view of all those things that happen. Now, like I said, a lot of that meat is in those other documents, but that's sort of the first part just about ESSER funds. Now, going into the future, we will have 2 more adults in each building this year that we've never had in the past that we're calling focus tutors, and they will be basically turned loose to find those kids. And then we've done a lot of analysis of data. Okay, who's behind, who missed, who's got a gap, and we're strategizing all summer then on how to get our support staff with those kids and get them caught up as much as possible. So that's kind of the initial future of those dollars too, is going forward is next year is with personnel. If you remember a couple months ago, I kept saying we were trying to talk about summer school, and we had a decent return for summer school for kids. Believe it or not, I guess you would believe it, we're having a bit of a hard time finding our teachers to staff it. I think some of them are just cooked. So we have a few openings. We're going to work on maybe opening that up to student monitors or maybe more of a paraprofessional role, maybe get a few more community members involved with that. But we are struggling a little bit to get teachers to staff the much expanded summer program. So
About how many positions short are you?
about 4, I think, right now, 4 teachers. Yeah. So it's not catastrophic, but it's impactful. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, we're full speed ahead with the same number of kids. We're trying to get some more adults involved to help. Yeah. We're really keeping that ratio down as much as possible as part of that goal. So our plan with maybe some paras is to maybe have a teacher travel around and maybe have the paras do the individual group work after instruction. So as much as possible. And we also have some very gifted paraprofessionals in the district as well. So. The next one is student and wellness plan update. If you remember, this was kind of the first round. This is state money. Now, the ESSER is all federal. Mm-hmm. So the governor, now this goes before COVID, almost a year and a half before COVID, we were talking about student wellness. But what I've heard out of Columbus is that the governor says, well, I gave you student wellness, so we're flatlining all other school funding in the state. Which, okay. And there was some flexibility with the student wellness, but it's also being rolled into the conversation about the budget bill, the student wellness, because the governor projected the student wellness dollars to continue out for his term completely. He was going to keep funding that, which was exciting on our end. But it also meant kind of a flat funding on what maybe would be a regular growth of cost of living. So we will see how that goes. But the areas that we've tried to touch with our student wellness and success update are enhancing building culture. Obviously, that's always a thing. And I think especially now, our physical activity equipment, that, if you remember, we put out quite a bit of money to enhance our playground equipment in our new elementaries. They would not be as nice as they are without this money. That was one of the budget items we really struggled with in the planning of our elementary schools. So that came through at a great time. We were able to employ an outreach caseworker through the Children's Services. All of our work for cultural awareness and equity has been financed by our bonus and success dollars. Learning with strong health concepts. We did talk about our lunches and also life activities. We actually enhanced some of our programming for healthy concepts of living. Health services, we talked about with the nursing. We kept an SRO when it was questionable. And then obviously all of our nutrition efforts to feed students over the last few months has been all a part of our student and wellness update. Any questions on that? That covers some of the things that was on those PowerPoints with that whole child, that whole thing.
We're
sorry?
still planning on having 2 SROs. now.
Yes, that's right. That's actually working quite well. Now, the extended learning plan, this is actually sort of this is our official response when you get a chance to look at it in detail. There's a lot there, but that's our official response that the state needed to show how we were doing with the whole thing. And this is how we're going to get kids caught up plan, basically. How we're going to, and that's mostly covers our summer school and our increase in tutor time starting this fall. Those are the details in the plan. But in that PowerPoint you shared with me, they talked about the elements of an effective summer school program, which we certainly took a look at, summer school design and evaluation, and then also best practices. So those are some of the topics that we picked up out of those PowerPoints that you shared with us. We also have taken a multi-criterion survey of our students. So we had teachers fill out aspects for each kid to identify priorities, who should be involved in the summer school. And we've had a very targeted effort to get kids in. You can imagine, I think it's human nature that some of the parents and families who are way engaged already would take the opportunity for summer school, maybe when their child may not need it as another child does. So we really have had to try to be very targeted with the students we believe would need the most help. And we did that through a multi-criterion survey and analysis of each child through the teachers to make sure that we're getting the right kids in. And then a very focused, purposeful reach out to those families, try to get those kids involved. Now, obviously, we can't force them to come to summer school, but we did try to get them as much information as quickly as possible, and then some real strong invitations to get the right kids in the program.
When will the students be registering for summer school? When
A
do you know?
lot of that's already done.
So what's the response been?
I don't know the number, Chantel. I'm sorry. It's good.
It's good. Okay.
I know it's good. in the context of the conversation, I know it's good because that brought up I don't have enough adults yet.
Okay.
So we've had a good response to filling our spots. Now the number, I'm sorry, I can't tell you, but I know it's a good response because I don't have enough adults to fill. Because we had talked about if we didn't get a good response from students, we could scale back maybe the adults. Well, that wasn't the case. So I think we're able to say we filled our spots, which is good news. Absolutely.
Glad
Yeah.
to hear they're taking advantage.
Exactly. Exactly. All right. And then we'll continue to go through that. And then we're hoping in the fall then to have follow up with those kids too, so we can see some gains, because we have an awful lot of data now on those kids that are coming through, how they did over summer, and then keeping track on them. And our support staff in the fall, then our new folks will have all that data to start watching kids. Okay, say who's catching up, who's not, who needs extra help. So it's a very methodical approach and a tribute to our curriculum department to think that all out and make sure we've got data to drive decisions.
Mr. Detweiler, for the families whose child is behind, but not truly detrimentally so, are they given some kind of directive on resources, private tutor list?
Oh, yeah,
anything?
actually, I'm glad you asked that. I didn't even have it in my notes, but every child is getting a summer enrichment packet, every child.
Okay.
So that's got an awful lot of activities, websites, things for parents to do with their kids. Yeah, I think it's a great, thank you. I forgot all about that. Another thing, and that's actually a pretty common thing for us to do, is try to prepare a district enrichment plan for the summer. So if you're right, if there are parents who are engaged and would like to have something else to do, they've got a place to start. Yeah, good question. Thank you. And then the last page there is community collaboration. And I have to admit, I was at Rotary today, and we actually honored Denise Hurt and Susan Fry today, and their cooperation with the Rotary to get mentors and reading program into kids is just tremendous. So it just made me think of how our community has rallied around us during this whole thing. You know, there were about a dozen Rotary members who recorded themselves reading books that then we played for the kids virtually. So we had one Rotarian a month reading a book to a grade level, and then we sent that out to the teachers so that, because this is what they would do if they were in school, right? So it was just a, I don't know, very heartwarming thing today to recognize how much that group alone, and that's across the board, about anywhere you go. The city's been supportive, just tremendous efforts. Everybody knows, and Chantel, I don't want to steal any of your thunder, but we have, this thing has been, this thing has been an adult problem, but it's really been a kid problem. I mean, they're the ones who've had their lives disrupted the most. So it's just so much that Fremont as a community has done to help us. I digress. So going on, we have been the site for a countywide vaccine clinic. We did our first one a couple weeks ago, and actually this week is week 3, so we're doing the follow-up. And in the meantime, Pfizer was approved as a 12 and up vaccine. So we're opening that up for all the county students, 12 and up. And that's this Thursday with a follow-up then for that group 3 weeks out on June 17th. So I can't say enough things good about our health department. They've been very cooperative and very helpful too. That is actually also not ProMedica here in town, but Bellevue Hospital, only because they had the Pfizer when ProMedica didn't. And I think different hospitals were getting different vaccines. So the Pfizer one is the one that was approved for younger people. So we paired with Bellevue Hospital, but also a very good partner. Last week we sent an administrator and SRO to a threat analysis training, one more that safety grant that we got this spring. So we continue to work with our police department to try to make sure our students are safe. The focus of this is, and this is actually coming statewide, but we're actually a little ahead of the game. This is training to see kids before they do something to themselves or someone else. Signals, warning signs, kids that may be starting to be depressed or maybe self-ID or suicidal ideation, things like that. So we're pretty excited then to break that out district-wide next fall with the help of our police department, our SROs, and our own trained administrators. So that's pretty exciting. And then the two things that we're doing sort of in the diversity thing, I know you're probably aware of this through some of the communications, but we were just granted Educators Rising, and this is that Future Teachers of America. What used to be the Future Teachers of America is changed to called Educators Rising. And we will start that program in the middle school next year and start identifying our own students that we think we might be good teachers. The goal there is to get them sort of identified in middle school and plugged into the early college program that will be geared towards education majors. So if we can get kids in middle school and kind of crank them up as we get them as freshmen, then they'll work for 2 years at Terra and then get their associate's degree and then graduate and continue their work at Heidelberg. So we've met with both Terra and Heidelberg University. So there's a direct path for these kids to get their teaching licenses through this program. Now it's, excuse me, some of our other programs are pretty clean. Pretty linear because, the manufacturing program was a very straight program. Take this, take this, take this. Educational complicated because you might have a K-5 or a primary teacher who wants to maybe a middle level that has a subject area concentration, or maybe a high school who's more of a chemistry major with the education classes. I mean, so it's such a wide variety of need for teachers. It won't be quite as simple, but we think we work with the institutions to get the kids what they need, no matter what they would choose to do or what part of education. Because you can imagine a middle school kid doesn't even know what being a physics teacher even looks like yet, right? So there's a lot to consider, but we're very excited about the partnerships with Terra and Heidelberg on that. And then I'm happy to announce that the other grant we got was for our current staff members who are not teachers, so support staff, to go back to college and get classes to become teachers. Awesome. So these are those para-pros I told you about, our student monitors who have said, and even I quote one of them, I've always wanted to do this, but I've never had a chance. So this is exciting. So 3 of the 4 that have identified are even taking classes this summer. All 4 of them will be taking classes in the fall as a tribute to that grant. So another way we're trying to get our own people in and up through the success ladder there. So very exciting on the community side of things. And I know that was a big thing with OSBA is that community connection, just get people in, people out, people talking to each other, make sure you're covered all the bases. Because everyone cares desperately about our students. So we're trying to reach out as much as we can. So that's kind of that report. Like I said, on your, if you're awake at 2 a.m. and can't sleep, there's a lot of information on these other plans. But it's all good stuff and keeps us honest about where we're headed and where the money's going and who's in charge and the whole basic strategic plan for all of those things. So we certainly answer any questions. It's Mrs. Ray.
Okay. I'm really excited. One of our students was recognized by the Rotary, who is graduating from Terra and is going into education.
Yes.
And she was part of our mentoring program, and she had a teacher mentor. So it's Tatiana Watt. Well,
yeah.
So don't let her go.
I sent her a thank you. Actually, I cut out the newspaper article today I got it. I'm sending it to her. Say, hang in there, girl. You hang in there.
Good.
Good for her. Very exciting. I actually did a guest speaking gig out there at Terra under the education program and got to meet her.
Okay.
She's a sharp young lady.
Yes.
For sure.
Yes. I'm so proud.
Any other questions? Okay. Thank you, guys. I appreciate the chance to talk about all we're doing. And I appreciate your opportunity to kind of go to all those things and, you see all these things going on. I think we're right. We're doing those things. We just don't talk about them enough. So I appreciate that opportunity. Thank you very much.
Okay. Our work session?
Yes, no, that was a work session.
That was it.
Are you tired? You should have been working really hard right there.
Well, I appreciate the suggestion as to what to do at 2 o'clock in the morning.
Well, yes, sir, 'cause you'll be awake.
Wide awake.
I know.
2 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah. Mr. Night Owl.
Okay, our legislative liaison report. Just layered.
Okay. Colleagues, there's a lot of material to provide for you tonight. So given my allergies and asthma are through the roof right now, I asked Mr. Detweiler if he could bring one of the barriers so that while I'm speaking as much as I'm going to need to tonight, I could do that a little bit more comfortably and keep you safe. And for whatever comfort it may be worth, I am fully vaccinated. So. All right. 2 items. Most recently, the 1619 project was brought to our attention by a letter that we all received, and I got some text messages from a couple residents along with the critical race theory. I did research it, and I got response from Ralph Lusher, and he's the staff attorney of OSBA, and gave me really good information on those 2 items and the structure of the State Board of Education with the Ohio Department of Education and what the state is and isn't requiring of this and the level of independence we have. But I want to hold that until the next meeting. I just want to let you know I got the information. It's very important, but there's not as pressing of a timeline as there is on this other piece of legislation that I'd like to talk to you about. The piece of legislation is House Bill 290. It's also known as the backpack bill. And Megan, I'm going to cite 2 sources. I have them printed for you for reference. The first one is from the OSBA. There is OASBO, the OSBA, and BASA. Mm-hmm. And all of them have reached out to their constituency, I guess you would say, and have asked them to take action, which we get periodically. So I'm going to read this to you. It says, House Bill 290, the backpack bill, is sponsored by and it lists the individuals. The bill expresses the intent to develop legislation that provides a voucher for every student in Ohio to attend the public school, charter school, or private school of the family's choosing. The legislation notes, this formula will ensure Ohio maintains strong funding for public and non-public schools while cultivating innovation and opportunity for all children. All of the organizations we belong to respond in this way. If implemented, House Bill 290 would undermine Ohio's system of public education and erode communities across the state whose identities are grounded in the rich history and quality education contributions of their public schools. Now, we all got to see the letter that Mr. Detweiler did in his official capacity on behalf of the school with the association he was part of. Some of the members here are new since we were pretty active in legislation. So I thought I'd start by telling you a couple of things we had done in the past. More so when a piece of legislation is a very wide-reaching, so impacts a lot of students in a lot of ways. That's one of the things that had gotten our attention previously. You might remember ESSA, Every Student Succeeds Act. A lot encompassed that. And in that arena, we hosted a town hall meeting. We invited our state rep. We invited all the elected officials. Teachers, administrators, students, parents spoke. And each of us kind of were assigned a different segment of the community to go out, whether it was, and educate them and ask them to write letters along with us. So we had a whole packet, kind of Fremont's response to this that we then sent to the legislative body. We used to participate in the OSBA platform. Every year, the OSBA says, okay, here are the political things that we want to advocate for. Are you okay with these or not? One of the years, they made 7 changes, and 4 of the 7 were recommended by us. And then the last that I can think of was, and I'm sorry, I don't remember the House bill itself specifically, but it was one that restructured almost the entire structure of the Board of Education of the state. Took a lot of the elected positions and made them appointed and so on. So this particular piece of legislation comes down to ed choice. Of all the pieces of legislation that is broad reaching and impacts public education, this is it. So I think this fits the bill, so to speak, of when we would have taken action before. And then, of course, where we have a majority vote to do so. It's kind of how it went. So you know what is in House Bill 290, the timeline of it, I'm going to refer to an email that I got from the attorney of OSBA that just came out in Facts in a Flash. They're hearing testimony now that ties the school funding bill that fixes the unconstitutionality of the way we do it now, the very good piece of legislation. It ties ed choice to the approval of it. And it's documented in here in some of the testimony that was given. Some of them stated the direct funding of vouchers and choice is also an important component of the Fair School Funding Plan. So they're already putting that in. With that, if I may, I'd like to make a recommendation that on behalf of our children here and our educators here and the impact of families, that we put a collective voice together. That's the draft that you all received from me. To give you a little bit of background, I put a draft together and I vetted the facts through Mr. Detweiler and Denise and Abby, and our president had an opportunity to take a look at it before I send it out to all of you. And if I may, I know it's a little bit lengthy, but I would like to read it because our community is not familiar with all of this. They don't get to see the handouts since they're not here personally. So me a couple minutes here to do that. And I thought afterwards we'd open it up for discussion. And I am certainly open to modifications that you may feel we need to take and see what your thoughts are on moving forward. So on behalf of the Fremont City School District, we'd like to express our concerns with House Bill 290. While the spirit of school choice may include a desire to provide equality by making all forms of education financially accessible to families, we believe its current language, combined with its missing elements still needed, will further perpetuate inequality in educating all of Ohio's children. House Bill 290 allows all schools to receive the same government funds, but doesn't hold all students to the same government mandates. And as a result, we believe the disparity among our children and our professional educators is blatant, particularly for individuals of color or economic disadvantage. This is apparent in testing requirements, student discipline, credentialing expectations of employees, quality of education, and access to education as follows. So I'd like to go through each of those areas. And you might recognize a lot of the topics. It's things we've talked about over the last few years as this has come up. So first, in disparity in testing requirements. The testing requirements among public schools, chartered schools, and non-public schools are vastly different. The flaws in the current Ohio Achievement Test and the history of government-selected curriculum and mandated teaching methods that public school employees and students are subjected to are well documented. You may recall the controversy of Common Core. Your legislation would continue to subject public school employees and students to such mandates, while other schools are allowed to participate by choice or can be exempted entirely. And we care very much for our employees and the families. And of course, our priority here is the students, and the thought that they'd all get the same government funds, but we'd hold these children to certain standards that others aren't expected to meet just doesn't seem to be of good service to children as a whole. I'd like to talk about the disparity in punitive measures of testing applied to children in the next section. House Bill 290 allows for continued unfair treatment of young children in districts of higher minority population and economically disadvantaged families. The retention requirement of the third grade reading guarantee mandates that all children attending public schools must pass the reading section of the mandated state test, or they aren't allowed to advance to the fourth grade, no matter how high they score on every other subject or how well they've performed in the classroom. The retention element is proven to be detrimental, and most states have withdrawn it. The majority of children attending chartered schools aren't subjected to the retention requirement. And the majority of children attending non-public schools aren't subjected to the test at all. And it's certainly not saying that we don't value the need to teach them to read. It's again, this punitive element is applied to students in public schools only. It's just not appropriate. The majority of children attending chartered schools, all right, I got that part, sorry about that.
Demographics, clearly.
Yeah, here we go. Demographics clearly show the majority of minority and economically disadvantaged students attend public schools, and as a result, are required to meet higher standards to achieve academic success and are subjected to punitive measures their counterparts in non-public schools are exempted from. And I just don't think that there's a way to say that that's appropriate. It's just not. Give me 1 second here, guys. There's disparity in student discipline measures and access to education for students with disabilities. So public schools are governed by the standards of FAPE, free and appropriate public education, which ensures that schools receiving tax dollars must educate all children equally, including those who struggle with discipline issues and/or disabilities. With regards to discipline, FAPE holds public schools accountable for identifying the source of the struggles and working through them. Public schools are prohibited from permanently unenrolling a student. Non-public schools aren't. This issue has presented a two-sided coin of disparity for decades. On one side, public school employees are required to put more time and resources into a student with discipline issues, which is perhaps a detriment to their employees and other students interrupted by the issues. On the other side, a struggling child's need and right to an education is equal to every other child. The ability to quickly remove a child deprives them of their right to an education. And to date, the only school required to retain and educate the child has been a public school. We've heard administrators from non-public schools say the student who demonstrated discipline, behavioral, or academic issues weren't a good fit, as they were transferring them back to their public school. With regards to students with disabilities, FAPE requires public schools to evaluate the students showing a need for support and provide any identified support needed. Non-public schools can deny a student's application to attend if they feel they can't provide the support needed. The area of discipline and access to education is riddled with discriminatory risks for children with medical and mental disabilities, as well as children suffering from the impact of poverty or dealing with matters of racial discrimination. House Bill 290 allows this type of discrimination against children to continue by not holding all schools to the same expectations. I'd like to touch on the disparity in credential requirements and quality of education. Public schools and their employees are held to higher expectations and greater financial costs to work within their profession. Public educators are not only expected to obtain their bachelor's degree, but are required to obtain continuing education at their personal expense. Other schools require nothing after a bachelor's degree. If the government's higher expectation of public educators was implemented to provide a higher quality of education to students, then the same expectation of quality should apply to all Ohio students. There's a question of constitutionality here, and I'd like to touch on that. Lastly, House Bill 290 begs the question of its constitutionality under Section 6.02 School Funds, where it specifically states, "The General Assembly shall make such provisions by taxation or otherwise as, with income arising from the school trust fund, will secure a thorough and efficient system of common schools through the state, but no religious or other sect or sects shall ever have any exclusive right to or control of any part of the school funds of this state." House Bill 290 diverts public dollars to religious education. The second issue with regards to constitutionality pertains to free choice. We understand that the concept of school choice applies the spirit of competition adopted in the private business sector in an effort to improve the quality of education in Ohio. A significant issue in applying your version of free choice to education versus purchased goods and services of the private business sector is this: a consumer can choose whether they put their dollars into buying goods and services of a company that embodies principles they don't agree with. Your proposal requires all taxpayers to financially support all schools, regardless of their teaching or principles applied. Even for those who support religious education, they may not wish to financially support all types of religious education. The bill diverts the funds to all forms of religious education, and in doing so, your concept of school choice removes a fundamental choice of taxpayers. It's disheartening to hear that HB 1, which is the school funding bill, a promising piece of legislation which finally and fairly corrects the unconstitutionality of Ohio's method of funding schools, might be blocked by tying its approval to legislation like House Bill 290, which we believe further defies the Constitution. We're concerned that the risks of discriminatory practices allowed in its content are hidden from the public, along with the removal of their choice to fund all types of religious education, including those they may not wish to be part of, under the misleading name of school choice. As we've done before, we've never crafted something and simply complained. We have always worked on a way to present options. How could we fix it? What do we do? Recommendations. So those are as follows. The options to remedy the disparity in education imposed by House Bill 290 are simply these. Number one, apply the same government mandates to all schools receiving government dollars. Or remove government mandates that don't apply to all schools receiving government dollars. Part of what makes the concept of competition successful in the private business sector is that business legislation strives to ensure they're engaged in fair competition, where regulations are applied equally among like industries and professions. If you're going to provide public dollars to non-public schools in the spirit of quality through competition, then we implore you to ensure it's managed in the same manner as private business, where costly and stifling regulations are reduced to foster growth, and regulation that remains is applied equally among all types of schools. While we believe these two options can go a long way to remedy the disparity within House Bill 290, it does still leave the question of constitutionality. In the spirit of collaboration and public service, we would hope to be included in future conversations over legislation having significant impact to our students, their families, and our staff. So with that, Mr. Detweiler, how about I open it up to you with thoughts, if you would?
Well, sure. I do have a couple, and you've covered it very well. Thank you. The constitutionality is a real problem. And I know that there's a group gearing up to do just that, maybe challenge the constitutionality of vouchers, because it is you be careful, it separates from church and state till now. I mean, it just seems to be a little bit of a inconsistency, obviously, I think. The percent of students that open roll out, and I told this to Mr. Click, our representative, I said, right now, our student body is about 55% white students and about 45 then that identify as minority students or students of color. And I said 85% of the students that open and roll out of our district into other schools in the area, 85% of them are white. So a disproportionate number of our students are open enrolling out. And this has been going on for a while. So when I wrote to Mr. Click, I pointed this out to him, and he responded in saying, yeah, but actually that 85% represents our community. And he said, the Census Bureau shows that 85% of our community are white. But I haven't responded yet back to him, but he's exactly making my point. Fremont is 85% white. My district is 55%. And it's due to open enrollment, which is to me, I think, a stepping stone to this. I mean, it's very much a way for people to make choices to do other things. And my argument back to him would be, if you make this easier, and then now all of a sudden you can start a school or your own, you can, go anywhere you want without any regulation, we will simply resegregate our schools. And I think that is something I just don't think is right. I believe that common public school is an institution that has made America great. And I'm getting a little lofty here, but I believe it in my heart, that what makes us American is our common schools, where everyone in the community comes together and learns to get along, figures each other out, knows how to understand each other. It's not perfect, but I think it's the best system in the world. And to threaten that with this, I just see us resegregating into small groups who then, in a country that's already so divided, it's hard to imagine. I can imagine what this will do to that very same trend. Think even politically, what that could do. You can imagine, given one more way to divide ourselves, where that could go. And I just see strong public schools as a part of the fabric of our nation. And it's no less important that to me. So that's kind of my
Thank you.
my stump speech on that.
Megan, have you had a chance to give much thought? I know you're just getting your feet wet and there's so much going on in your brand new job. So if you have not, it's fine.
Okay.
But I do want to give you an opportunity if you have anything you wanted to share.
No.
Okay. Alex, any thoughts?
I agree with the big question for me is the question of constitutionality. And the separation of church and state. And children and parents have always had the right to send their children to other educational options. question becomes whether everybody else's tax dollars should pay for that. And if people desire to pay tuition to go to a non-public school, that's always been there, right? But this bill seems to extend that right to mandate that everybody pays for it, and I just don't think that's constitutional. And I do like the two options to remedy the disparity in education as written by Chantel.
Mary Alice, any thoughts?
I also agree with how you explained everything and broke it down. And I also agree with the option that you put of mandating with using the government tax dollars, that it should be all the same. It should be equal, of all the schools, of how they follow the rules of the teaching and everything that the public schools required to do. So, and I agree that everybody has the option of where they want their children to go to school. But at the end of the day, if it's using the government dollars, everybody should be held. The schools should be held to the same standard.
Aye.
Well, I agree with all the above and also can refer back over the years for students who have opted out and have done the school choice, or wasn't called it then, and working within the system, okay, for many years, dealing with some of those children, coming back to the public school with, I mean, way, way, way below their class, but is expected to function and do all the testing and do all the things. And it's from what I've seen, and especially where there would be no mandates, where there would be no same kind of expectations, I can't imagine how those students would fare. If the government saying, you have school, you can do it in the church home, wherever you want to do it, but there are no regulations, and those kids don't always get the quality education that they need. During the pandemic, our students had the programs at home, but they were regulated and they were under supervision, and well, that's worked well because my own grandson received his honor cords. The other than he, was totally virtual and aced his college courses. So with guidance and the proper direction and the proper laws regarding that, the kids could do okay. But in the past, I haven't seen that. Mr. Detweiler?
No, I think it's true, Vine. As we were talking, there's a very common scenario here that child comes up through middle school, maybe struggling a little bit, gets to high school, becomes an attendance issue. Mm-hmm. And our state law for attendance is very scripted. I mean, there's no wiggle room at all. It's, at this many days, XX happens. And along that line, then eventually parents are brought to bear and charges are pressed on the parents. Well, about then, one typical pathway is they pull their child and go to a non-chartered public school or even a chartered public school. Mm-hmm. Then they kind of get around that. Well, then what happens, unfortunately, then 2 years later, now they're 17, they've earned no credits because they still haven't been going or being successful. They get kicked out of a virtual school for non-attendance, which means they don't turn their computers on, and they're back to us, which is the point Chantel made in here, is that then we take them. Okay, I mean, we're a public school. We take them. And now we have to try to get that child across the finish line, which is a tremendous challenge. Mm-hmm. Bad habits, but they've worked that system to sort of evade consequences of the laws that are in place for us to uphold. But then that law says you almost must take them back when another institution hasn't made it happen and make it happen. So it's just, I see that just exploding. If we go into a private school, maybe where it's not going well, or a fly by night, and there are good private schools. Please don't misunderstand. Of course there are, and there have been for hundreds of years. But there'll be some Mickey Mouse money grabbing schools that pop up over this nonsense, and we'll have to fix that because those kids will go. It will be a disaster, and then we'll have lost a year or 2 years of that child's career.
And the way the accountability system is established,
Yeah.
we become responsible for that child's performance, even though the student hasn't been in the school, our school. They've been elsewhere.
Any thoughts?
I think there's two things. I love the letter, and I totally agree with it. I think two things that House Bill 290 doesn't get into: the constitutionality of it. Amend the Constitution. If there's a problem, I mean, the state says that we're supposed to fund a public school system. They're funding the public school system. If you want that to change to where state tax dollars are going to private or non-public schools, then amend the Constitution. Don't just add to this and say, well, it's okay if we do this. It's the same with funding for schools have been found unconstitutional for decades now. And what they do is they just add to the system. They never just go back and, well, if we really need to change it, then let's amend the Constitution. You're just adding to it. You're making it more convoluted, and it makes no sense to anybody. Let's simplify it. It's really simple to me that either make it unconstitutional or make it constitutional, one or the other. The other problem that I have with it is I am all for choice. If you want to send your kid to another school and, you know, it could be 3 hours away. If you want to take your kid every day to school there, great. That's your choice. The problem is I don't think that competition belongs in schools. They want to say competition. As a business owner, I get it. And that, you know, the strong will survive, or however you want to say it. Competition is great when it comes to athletics between schools. Competition for school between federal testing mandates, state mandated testing, the State Board of Education, everything they put out there. If everything that they're putting out there is to make the child better, then why shouldn't it be to every school out there? And if it's not to every school out there, then competition is unfair. I mean, I've said it before. They're setting public schools up to fail. There isn't any way for public schools in the long run to succeed through this. And like you were saying, schools are going to pop up because it's going to be a money grab. And it's not every school. I'm not saying that. But schools will come up because you're opening up. It's basically a free market competition for school. And then all of a sudden you're going to have big schools here and little schools here. And like you said, when they get kicked out of that school, we're going to have to take them back because we're the public school where they live. We're the district that they live. And shame on us for not educating this kid. He hasn't been here for 4 years. What do you expect? And he hasn't been required to take the same testing, or the employees haven't been held to the same processes and everything else. It's just so totally unfair. Make it fair across the board before you do that. The third grade reading guarantee is a joke. That should be gone so long ago. It's ridiculous. It makes no sense whatsoever. And it makes even smaller sense that non-public schools don't have to adhere to it. If it's so important, why isn't every school in the state of Ohio teaching their kids or having them test for the third grade reading guarantee? It's absolutely ridiculous that the people that even introduced this is driving me crazy because there's no sense to it whatsoever. And they're breaking the law, and they're breaking our Constitution. And they're making it unfair for all the public schools that they're supposed to be funding. You know, it blows my mind that our leadership of our state is actually doing this junk. So
I would guarantee you improve scores if I had the choice to remove students. Guaranteed. I'd be a hero. We'd be fixed next year.
yes.
We'd just be
Sorry,
done.
they're not a good fit for Fremont City Schools.
That's
Let's
right.
send them to wherever, and they have to stay there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'd be fixed. Yeah, absolutely.
Tom, you make a very good point on if you want to do something outside of the Constitution, then change the Constitution. So then it's legal.
Right.
And then there's not this tied up battle for decades.
Right.
I thought about putting it in. I just, after all this, couldn't come up with the words. Would you like the statement in there? I can do that. Would you guys like to include that statement that if, rather than further confusing things by doing something that doesn't match the Constitution, if you want to do this,
I mean,
try to change the Constitution.
I'm not a
first.
constitutional attorney, but if the Constitution says that the state is to provide public education and other schools that are non-public do not get those tax dollars, I don't know. Maybe I'm really simple-minded, but that seems pretty simple to me that the state does not use tax dollars for anything other than public education. And I'm not saying I'm for or against money going somewhere else, whatever, because it still comes down to a parent should get that chance to make the choice for their child. I completely agree with that. But if it's against our Constitution, how in the world are we trying to pass HB 290 if it's against the Constitution? Why isn't anybody just standing up and saying, we can't do that? There's no reason it even comes to the floor because it's against our state constitution. It's like they look at the Constitution, they're like, it's okay. We'll look past that right now.
Some of the responses that I've heard, and I think even in the response you got in the letter, was the representative supporting the bill agrees that there should be less regulation. Problem is, if you don't equalize the regulation at the same time you distribute the money, you immediately, the day that goes in effect, you have disparity.
Yep.
You have children who are held to higher academic standards and receive punitive measures that other children don't.
Yep.
If you don't fix it simultaneously, you immediately have the problem. Is it just a point you wanted to make on the constitutionality, or would you like it part of our statement?
It doesn't matter to me. I mean, if it's in there, I mean, to me, it just makes it very simple that you're trying to go against our state constitution. It shouldn't go any further than that. In my mind, I mean, it's you're introducing a bill that is breaking our constitutional law. I think anybody can understand that. It's just they decide that they know more and don't want to release that information to the general public. So, but
anything anyone wants to add? Any thoughts on adding Tom's statement or anything else?
The constitutionality issue, like Tom is saying, to me also is a big problem here with this. And the blatant inequities in terms of what is demanded of public schools as opposed to what is demanded of everybody else. And it's not right, and the students are the ones who suffer. Of all the governmental intrusions that we've had to live with over the last 30 years in this field, the third grade reading guarantee is the most toxic, in my opinion. It never should have been done the way it was done. And it has not helped one bit in terms of reading development, and has only served to impose extreme pressure onto very young children who just don't need that kind of stress in their lives. And I said it from day one, it's abusive. It's legalized child abuse is what it amounts to for many of our students.
I would ask the state if they're going to, or the House or whoever, if they're willing to pass this, because other staff members at non-public schools are not held to the same educational requirements. I'm just asking right now to anyone down in Columbus. My wife is a teacher who has her master's plus whatever, and my daughter is going to be a teacher. Can I get some tax dollars back? Do I get a refund? Because my wife has had to put in that education and we've paid for that. It's not like the school district pays for that or anything else. Families have to pay for that. And if a teacher at another district or at another non-public school doesn't have to do that, you're putting in an undue burden on a lot of the families that are in this state. Is that fair? Is that constitutional according to our state constitution? Come on. somebody needs to hold these people's feet to the fire because they're just, sometimes I wonder if they're just hanging out down there and just thinking, this sounds good. Let's put this on paper and let's go ahead and pass it. And let's add 5,000 other things to it so we can get it passed. Make it simple.
If we were to add his statement, would it be as one of the options or would it be questions of
I
constitutionality?
think I would put it under questions of constitutionality.
Thank you.
I could put it in there. And then somewhere I could also, make the statement that without addressing the equality of regulation at the same time, you start distributing the money equally.
Yep.
The day you do that, day one, you've created disparity.
Yep.
That's unfair. So how about I work in those two statements?
Yeah.
Into that
Yeah, because that
section.
creates discrimination
That's what I
from
was
the very beginning. From the very time that you start this, if they're not changed at the same time, you've just discriminated.
Okay, so how about this? I'd like to make a motion to approve the recommended letter with the 2 revisions. And what I will do is get the revision to Mr. Detweiler and distribute it to you guys. And if you're good with that, then if Linda could put that on letterhead. And my recommendation is OSBA gave us a whole list of the representatives through the state that have signed off on this, that they all get a copy.
Yeah.
And I'd like to send it as well to Senator Reineke, because eventually a House bill goes to the Senate.
Right.
So I think it's a fair heads up. This is how we feel about this. And
I'm not opposed to it being sent to every representative and every senator, because the ones that are fighting this, I think it's good for them to know that there are districts, there are people around that are rallying behind you to give you that support. There may be someone, who knows, 3 hours away from us, in Southeast Ohio that's like, man, I feel like I'm on an island. Is there anybody else? I mean, I would suggest that we send it to every person in the state legislature.
okay, I'm good with that. Jeff, I mentioned in the email to Mr. Detweiler that Jeff Dornbush, we had a little bit of a conversation about this just to get an outside district's perspective that crafted it. He asked if the final letter could be forwarded to him to share with the school board that he's a member of and the school in which he participates. And Mr. Detweiler, what do you think of sharing it with your colleagues,
Absolutely.
your other superintendents?
That's what I was going to ask, if the other school districts surrounding her.
Yeah.
Oh, it's all we talk about.
If you'd like, at least within the county, we can also get a copy of it to the president of the boards of education to give them a draft. Sometimes people want to participate and they just need a draft,
Yep.
something to go on.
Yep.
Okay, so I have the motion to approve the letter with the 2 revisions, and I'll
So-
let you take it from there.
I'll second.
Moved by Ms. Laird, second by Mr. Price, that we approve the letter with 2 revisions. Is there any further discussion?
Thank you for your time, everyone.
Thank you.
Roll call, please.
Mrs. Laird,
Yes.
Mr. Price,
Yes.
Mrs. Spiritu,
Yes.
Ms. Ray,
Yes.
Mr. Gorbetz.
Yes, motion carried. Okay, we don't have anything under student matters, so we'll go to staff matters.
Thank you, Mr. Corbetts. Item 1, approval of resignation for Hallie Davis. Item 2 are OBIs, and OBIs are our onboard instructors. If you're learning to drive a bus, well, you talk about regulation. Ooh-wee. Mr. Anway is going through the process of getting his bus driver's license. He has a new respect for just how difficult it is to pass all the tests, the driving test, the written test, the air brake test. It's unbelievable. Anyway,
So
we
Tom's going to join you
He
on
is.
some routes?
I've corrupted him. He's going
Way
to join
go,
me.
Tom.
He actually is taking his test tomorrow. He says if he fails, he might be off the hook for the rest of the school year. As of right now, I'm penciled in for Friday, so we'll see how it goes. Anyway, those 3 are the trainers. So they are the ones who ride with you to get your hours in, just like kids do with their licenses to get bus driver certified. Item 3 then is a status change for Michael Berkowitz, the custodian, please.
Okay, we have a motion to approve items 1, 2, and 3.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Moved by Mrs. Espiritu, seconded by Mrs. Ray. Any concerns regarding those items? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Spiritu,
Yes.
Ms. Ray,
Yes.
Mrs. Laird,
Yes.
Mr. Price,
Yes.
Mr. Gorbetz,
Yes, motion carries. Okay, curriculum items.
Thank you, Mr. Gorbetz. Yes, I have one item tonight with the board's approval, student devices, 1,000 of them, Chromebooks, to get us one-to-one at Ross High School.
Motion to approve item 4.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Price, seconded by Mrs. Ray. Any further questions or discussion regarding item 4? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Spiritu,
Yes.
Ms. Laird,
Yes.
Mr. Price,
Yes.
Ms. Ray,
Yes.
Mr. Gorbetz,
Yes, motion carried. Fiscal. Item 5. Is a
Okay.
recommendation of the treasurer. Do we have a report of any kind tonight?
yes.
Okay.
We have some slides that should be with your packet to just go over the financial report. I'm going to very quickly just go over the general fund report. Oh, sorry. Yes. Just go over a couple things that are affecting us right now. If we look at our current fiscal year to date revenues that have come in, good news is the real estate tax collections this year was up a little bit to what we expected. We thought with the pandemic that we weren't going to have as high of collections, but luckily we actually did. So we did have a 2.18% increase this year, which we're very happy with. We didn't have as high of interest on investments this year or income tax. The interest just is that interest rates are down this year, and we didn't, with the building, we're paying a lot of bills, so our cash is lower. So that's what's causing us to see a decrease in that area. And the income tax going down a little bit has to do with partially the pandemic and also with the deadlines for taxes being moved to May, so we might not even see those until the next fiscal year. So that's just something quick on how the revenues are doing. We have about a 0.8% down this year to last, so it's not too bad.
Megan, do you think if the income tax is delayed till into next fiscal past July 1, will that artificially bump next year potentially?
Possibly, but it could also not, because they're worried that due to the pandemic that we're not going to have as high
Just
of
overall.
collections
Got it.
overall anyways. Yep. Expenses, everything except for our other expenses category has actually gone down this year. Part of that being the ESSER funds, which stands for Elementary, Secondary School, and Emergency Rescue.
Show off.
Someone may have sent me that.
Nice. First
Oh, you got a cheater out there. Sending you answers. Show off.
So that may have helped some of our expenses go down this year from general fund, but Mr. Detweiler has been very good at keeping our expenses down as well. So that's just a quick overview of the expenses.
Very good.
Yeah.
Any recommendations?
Yeah.
Item 5. We have a motion to approve item 5.
Mm.
Moved by Mrs. Ray,
Second.
second by Ms. Laird. Is there any further discussion regarding item 5? Okay, roll call, please.
Ms. Ray?
Yeah.
Ms. Laird?
Yes.
Mrs. Spiritu?
Yes.
Mr. Price?
Yes.
Mr. Gorbetz?
Yes. Aaron? That was a very good report.
Was
Thank you.
Eh.
Careful, it's early.
Okay, board member communications and information, Mr. Price.
Thank you, Chantel, for drafting that letter, bringing that out and being able to read it now so that anybody that was listening or will watch it or anything it gets that information. I think the biggest thing is just people need to stay informed, and I get it. There's so many other things to do, so many other ways to spend your time, but man, when it comes to the education of your kid or where your tax dollars are going, even if you don't have kids, be involved. You know, these guys down in Columbus need to and ladies need to understand what's going on. I mean, it just seems like they're so out of touch with the reality of what's really happening that they're just trying to get things through, and it drives me crazy. So I think that's the best way, but this is great. Thank you for the time that you put in on that and everything. So, other than that, school's winding down. So good luck to all the
It doesn't wind down, it winds up.
That's
Trust
true.
me.
That's true.
Yeah, there's nothing down about it right now. Kids, you get closer, man. It just
That's
gets,
true. So
they're up.
next time we meet, it'll be after graduation and prom, and everybody will be on school vacation or summer vacation. So relax this summer, put in some work if you're behind a little bit, but
Yeah.
That's all I had.
Well, I'd like to thank Chantel for this awesome report. I think that she's our legislative liaison and also our student achievement lead, and I think this kind of works in those. So thank you so much for that hard work and the enlightenment and us being able to share that. I also want to congratulate again formally our one of our students, Tatiana Welch, who was honored by a Rotary Club and also is going into education and is continuing her education. She's always been a very good student and has done well. So I look forward to seeing her coming back in 2 to 4 years to Fremont. I'm kind of concerned a little bit about with all the technological advancements that we're needing to be able to compete, for our students to be able to compete on a global, how would this school choice affect these students and their achievements or being able to attain these degrees. We we're working together with the colleges, the universities. We're getting all kind of technologies to help our students advance so that our students can compete. So for those students who are going to be going helter-skelter here and beyond, how will they be able to gather and garner this great opportunity that public schools offer in terms of them being able to get the information, to get the knowledge, to get the experience, to be able to compete in this global economy. So that's a little concerning. It's something that seems like our legislators would think about, and also congratulations to all of our graduates who worked hard and diligently. And we will be honoring them and with their diplomas very shortly. So I'd like to congratulate all of our graduates.
I'd like to thank our paraprofessionals and monitors for taking advantage of the grants made available and stepping up on the journey to be an educator.
Yeah.
I think that's really great. That's a very noble thing to do, a very brave thing to
Very.
do. So I really admire you for doing that. I'm very grateful. Gosh, I didn't know when the day would come. It's so wonderful to see it here that we're getting to that 1-to-1 ratio of access of technology.
Yes.
What a blessing that is. And boy, will that go a long way to that being able to compete globally and,
Yes.
and catching up. And I want to thank everybody, and, definitely Mr. Detweiler for bringing it forward and everybody for passing the removal of the masks and the mandates for our children. I was telling John, it's reminded me of the comments that Dr. Bauer made. You might remember when Dr. Rivolo and Dr. Bauer were here. And although Dr. Bauer was very much in favor of doing so safely, she still wanted measures in place. She wanted to get kids back in school. One of the first things that she said was the biggest bulk of the burden to manage this pandemic has been placed on our children. They are carrying the heaviest impact. And she mentioned that at the time, adults, even then, were able to engage socially. As long as they did it within these rules, they had the opportunity. The biggest place for children to engage socially was removed. We had the engagement through our professions. We had to do it safely. But the ability to continue on with their school education had been dampened. So it's nice to see that we've passed this to free kids equal to what adults have been provided. So that's it.
I also want to say congratulations to the staff that are taking the opportunity to further their education with the grants available. That's a big step for them to take.
Sure is.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of dedication, and I'm glad they're taking advantage of it. And I also like to thank Chantel for drafting the letter, for taking the time to do that. It was well written, so thank you for that time. Also, congratulations to our graduates for this school year. And it was a struggle for them and something different, not something what they weren't expecting. But it looks like things are getting better. We're lifting the mask too, and we're following the state guidelines of as things have changed, we have changed what we do too. We don't want to add anything extra. We want to follow what the guidelines are. So
Seems appropriate. We'll have a maskless prom where most schools have already had their proms. It just, I don't know, there's something sweet about that. Our students can enjoy themselves.
One of the things that has been a significant irritant to me over the years is when laws are written, legislators intrude upon our profession with absolutely no consultation with the people who actually work in the profession. And this is another example. House Bill 290 of that. Education is a profession, and in no other profession is there as much legislative intrusion as there is in this one, with absolutely no input from the actual practitioners. And again, this isn't it just isn't sound policy function that way. I would like to commend Chantel for writing this very well done letter. It takes time to do these things and a lot of effort. Now, the one thing I was going to mention is something that Mr. Detweiler just reminded me to mention, because he didn't think I knew.
Just knew it. I forgot. That's all.
We want to congratulate the girls' track team for winning its second district championship in a row. Tremendous accomplishment for the girls. And we've commended and congratulated a lot of of our athletic teams this year.
Uh.
And by virtue of that, it should be clear that our athletic program is strong and will continue to improve.
When you're finished.
I'm about finished.
Well, this has been the year of change, of adapting, of resilience, and I just hats off many times over to our staff, our teachers, who, I mean, they had to relearn how to teach
It's true.
in a year, in less than a year, because they had to take off and help to they mastered this pandemic, and our kids got taught, and we're getting ready for graduation. So with all the abnormalcy, they have worked wonders to make life as normal and as possible for our students. So I applaud our teachers. I applaud our administrators. I applaud all the ones who were able to make this year happen. Everything was provided emotionally, physically, psychologically, every kind of support was in place to help our students. And I really applaud you guys and I applaud our teaching staff.
It's true.
The one thing we can say with utmost certainty, the district did the best it could
Mm-hmm.
under extreme adverse circumstances. Hopefully, we've said it 1,000 times, hopefully next year will be normal.
No, hopefully
Yes.
about it.
It's normal.
Without House Bill 2.
Hopefully nothing else happens.
Without this House Bill.
Makes it difficult for us. But kudos to the entire staff at the Fremont City Schools. Really did do the best it possibly could do
Yes.
for students. Okay, with that, we'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
One more. Thank you to our new intern treasurer who did a wonderful job.
Thank you.
And you look very pretty sitting over there. And we're just real proud to have you and happy to have you, Megan.
Thank you.
And I'll move to adjourn.
Moved by Mrs. Ray,
Second.
second by Mrs. Spiritu. Hopefully.
Mr. Ray,
Yes.
Mrs. Spiritu,
Yes.
Ms. Laird,
Yes.
Mr. Price,
Yes.
Mr. Corbett.
Yes. Motion carries. We are adjourned.